At Forest, he enjoyed 2 promotion campaigns, 1 relegation battle. He played under 6 managers and 3 different chairmen. But he was only at the club for 4 seasons. Plenty for Lee Camp to talk about next. Well, Lee, fantastic to see you again. Let's start with what I suppose most Forest fans know you for, which was that mad 5 minutes at Pride Park when you saved the penalty and all hell broke loose. How do you remember that mad 5 minutes?
Well, that's what it was. It was a mad 5 minutes. It was just chaos going around. I think Lewis had been sent off early on in the game, which then obviously puts Derby on the front foot. And you think they're going to really take the game to you, but they didn't really, sort of seize their moment with it all until this final 5 minutes. I remember having quite a quiet game, thinking, like, well, you expect a little bit of away from home, local Derby, obviously played in the game as a Derby play. You know it's going to be, with the home side are going to come at you, but they didn't really come at us. And then out of nowhere, there was a penalty given, which I can't really remember the penalty incident. I think there was a cross and it hit Chamberlain's hand, or a shot that hit
I can't even remember.
hand.
That's a good question.
I'm sure Chamberlain was involved in it somehow, but it was a very dubious penalty, to say the least. And all I remember is I thought Chrissy Commons would take it. I thought he would be set up for this, obviously having just signed. And with him being a left footer, my mind was thinking, I'm sure I'd seen some video, or I'd known. I used to have a little black book, and I always used to write down whenever I used to see people take a penalty on a Saturday night or on a Sunday on the highlights. I always used to write down the names and where they went and when it was. So I always had. This was before you had so much, videos and all these analysts you have at the football clubs now who are throwing things at you. But so back then it was a bit of do it yourself. So I had a little black book, and I'd sort of seen before the game who played for them. So I fully expected, if they get a penalty, it's going to be Chris Commons if he's on the pitch with him. The stick he was getting, I'm sure he'd want to score against Forest for his new team. It'd endear him to the Derby fans, etc. I thought it was made for him last minute. And he walked away. He shied away from it. And I thought, is this like a ploy? And then I saw the kid who took it. I can't remember his name. The boy was on loan from Arsenal.
Yeah.
Nasser Barry, that's it. He was on loan from Arsenal. And I knew the name, but I'd never seen him take a penalty, and I had no idea what he'd do. But he had played a couple of passes during the game, and he sort of played it with the inside of his foot, but always bent it. So instead of just playing a simple 5-10 yard pass with your side foot straight, he'd always put like a little bit of whip on it, and he sort of hit it on his bunion, if that makes sense. So he gets that little bit of spin into people, bit of right to left for like the cricket fans. So it was like, I watched him do it, and I think he had a cross from our left back side, and I think he whipped it in, and I think I tipped it over. So as soon as he grabbed the ball, I was thinking about what he'd done, and I just thought, go right. I was always going to my right, so it was a complete gamble. But it was always my theory was based on the fact that the way he'd passed the ball, and he'd had this sort of curl to it. So I thought, well, he's not going to open. I can't see him opening himself up, and I can't see him using his laces because he's never done it in the 10, 15 or whatever minutes he's been on the pitch. And thankfully enough, it was right, and I saved it. And then I think from the corner there was a save from a header.
Yes, which was actually probably a better save than the penalty, wasn't it?
Which was probably a better save. Yeah. But at that point, obviously, I stood around, but the adrenaline was going, and I wasn't losing. I was. There's a story which I'll tell you about in a second. Why I was scared for my life not to lose. But so I made a save, and then I think the emotion comes out. I remember beating my chest and screaming at people to hang on, because at this point now the momentum really, that siege I spoke about, I thought was going to be coming, had come, and you knew that this was like the last moments where we were hanging on basically. So the corner goes the corner to the other side. So it comes in, and Miles Edison scores a goal, and the referee disallows it. And I just remember him heading it, and it flying past me, and I hear the ball hit the net and the roar. And I remember just turning to myself thinking, "Oh, I can't believe it." And it's a free kick, and I've seen it a few times since, and I still don't. And later on, obviously, I know Miles. I came came through at Derby with him, and we was at Bournemouth together for a little while, and we spoke about it on a few occasions, and it was like, I still to this day have no idea how it was given a free kick, but maybe that was our luck we shined, because maybe the penalty was a bit dubious. So I don't know. It was a chaotic 5 minutes that was mad, which resulted with probably 2 wrong decisions, which made for the occasion. So yeah.
But what it did do was endear
back,
you to Forest fans, didn't it? Well, I didn't realise that was only your 4th Forest game. It seemed more than that, but that really endeared you, because there was obviously that Derby Forest thing, whose side is he on kind of thing, and that really helped endear you to the Forest supporters.
Well, yeah, thankfully it did, and thankfully it went my way, because I remember when I signed, looking at the fixtures, and I'd heard about 10 days before I actually signed, or so, maybe 2 weeks, so that there might be a bit of interest in going to Forest on loan. So in my mind, I knew that obviously there might be a bit of stick, ex-Derby, not coming from Derby, so on. And it didn't exactly finish great for me at Derby in terms of my relationship with the fans anyway. So I thought, well, I'm probably going to get some stick. Thought, quite like it. Sounds pretty good to me. Get back up to the East Midlands. I'm a football fan. I grew up with Forest winning FA Cups, and Stuart Pearce in the early 90s, who's them in the Premier League with Stan Collingwood. So I knew what sort of football club it was, and then it would be a great place to play. So as soon as I heard about it, I was chomping at the bit. It took a few weeks to happen, and then obviously I came in before the Ipswich game on a Tuesday night, and I didn't really look much further than the first couple of games. And then I looked down the list after I'd signed and saw that Derby was I think it was the 4th game, as you said, and it was like, oh, here we go. So this will be interesting. But the story why I was scared for my life is that we reported to the City ground on the morning of the game, because it was a dinner time kickoff. So we reported for some breakfast, pre-match meal or whatever it was. And I'd driven over from Derby, because I had my house in Derby, so I was staying at my house, and then came over, went in. It was all quiet. City ground was quiet. The team bus wasn't there, I don't think, at the time. So we went into what was the players' lounge on the left-hand side by where you walk in. I think it's a Robin Hood suite, I think, if I remember right. Went in there, had some food, did our team meeting, went to get on the bus. So walk out and you turn right to go to the car park to the bus, and there's 4 of the biggest geezers that I thought they were like 4 security or bouncers. And one of them just looked at me and went, "Do you remember who you're playing for today?" And I honestly, I wasn't expecting it. And it's one of them moments where it catches you off guard, and people always say to you, "What would you do if that happened?" And I tell you, it took me by so much shock. I must have gone as white as a ghost. I remember just walking over to the bus going, "Oh my God."
They were just fans, were they?
Just 4 Forest fans. 4 Forest fans.
Right.
I mean, these are big guys. I don't consider myself a big guy, but I don't consider myself small. But these were big guys, and there were 4 of them. So I'm thinking, like, I ain't letting no one down today. So I get on the bus, and that's all that's on my mind on the way to the ground, going down the 52. Sorry, getting towards Pride Park, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So nothing else is bothering me. Thinking, if I get back to the City ground, my car's there. It's going to be turned over. It's going to be smashed up. They're going to be waiting for me. Anyway, it plays out. We get back to the City ground, and the same 4 guys were there. Hugs. You're one of us now. Don't you ever worry about it. Honestly, it was like,
wow.
I don't think they realised. And you know what? I never seen them again. Never had like a laugh or joke about it. And if I walked past them in the street, I don't think I'd recognise them. But if he was that guy, let me tell you, I had 90 minutes of panic. I was not concerned about anything else. It was the strangest thing. It was the strangest thing. But then you get back and it's all forgotten, and you're like, you know, it's just the emotion of football. That's what makes it so great, I suppose.
How did that loan move come about? Because I think a lot of people, and I certainly did, I'd forgotten the kind of break that you had between the loan spell and the permanent transfer. In my mind, you went from loan and then signed permanently, but there was that gap once Calderwood had been sacked and Billy Davies came in. But go back to the loan spell to start with. How did it all come about?
Well, we go back a bit further. I'd obviously signed with QPR and had a season at QPR, and I'd signed a new contract. Like Flavio Briatore, Bernie Eccleston had come into the football club while I was there, and they obviously had big plans and all these ideas, and they invested in players and recruited in the January. And I got a new contract. I had a great relationship with Gianni Palladini. I had a good season at QPR. I think I played every game. I think I was runner-up and player of the year. So I'd had a really good year. I'd signed a new, I think it was a 4.5-year contract. So I felt as if I was part of the future there. And then I came back pre-season. Ian Dowie came in as manager, and it was as if like I just wasn't wanted. It was like, nope, that was it. I was like, well, I don't understand quite what's happened here. What's the disconnect? Because at the end of the season, everything's great. We go away for the summer. In the end, it came down to that I think Flavio had took a dislike to me for one reason or another. Political stuff, as you find in football clubs. And I had a 4-year contract. I was sat on a 4-year contract. So in so many ways, I was kind of stuck. I had security, but that wasn't what I was over. I wanted to play. I wanted to build. I'd had a stop-start year at Derby the year before I signed for QPR, and I wanted momentum and I wanted to keep playing. So I'd spoke to Gianni, who had a great relationship, and I'd also spoke to Ian Dowie, and they were both really good with me. And I said to Ian Dowie, I said, look, basically what I just said, I wanted to build momentum in my career. I've worked hard to get back going, to get first team football again. I don't want it to stop. So if there's an opportunity of a loan, I'd like to go. So anyway, you speak to whoever, feelers get put about, and then probably, like I say, I think I was sat in Derby actually. I think I was sat in a restaurant in Derby one Tuesday night. I'd come home after training to see the family, and I was out having some dinner, and I got a call from my agent just saying, I think Forest would be interested. Would you be interested? I said, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm up here. It's probably not going to move that quick. Let me go back to them and conversations, and then through the rounds and everything. And then funny enough, we played Forest on a Saturday, probably a week or so later, 10 days later. And it was after the game then when I got the calls to say, because I knew it was bubbling, but I didn't know which way it was going to go, whether or not it was actually going to happen. And then QPR beat Forest 2-1 on the Saturday, and I got a call that night to say that it was agreed, and I'd get a phone call Sunday. And then I spoke to Colin on the Sunday. I spoke to Barry Richardson, the goalie coach, on the Sunday, and I headed up Sunday night, and I was at the City Ground Monday morning, like 8 o'clock to sign. So played first game was Ipswich on the Tuesday, and then had the spell right through till Christmas. And then obviously Colin got sacked Boxing Day, and we'd already had talked about staying till the end of the season, whether that would be, I was well into it. I had 3 years left on my contract, so whether or not they were going to buy me or at least loan me to the end of the season and get through to the summer to see where they were, that was being discussed. I think, the rumours the noise out of QPR, or the nonsense, I should say, out of QPR was that they'd agreed £1 million previous to the loan. It was written in a contract. Forest had to honour it. It all got a bit mucky, which was complete nonsense. I don't even think Forest was covering all my wages on that first loan spell. So there was no agreement. It was a straight 90 days, I think it was at the time, which took me through to, I think the last game was Norwich away in Christmas week, when John Pemberton was caretaker manager before Billy came in. And then after the Norwich game, that was me done. And
you were quite outspoken, actually. I remember interviewing you at Carrow Road, and you were, for a player who...
I was pissed. I'm going to be honest with you, I was real pissed. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go back to QPR because I knew what was waiting for me. That was the thing. I said, I knew I had momentum at Forest, and I loved being there. I loved the lads. I enjoyed being back in the East Midlands, and I felt happy. I felt happy that I was playing well, and I was at a football club that was a big football club that was going to go in the right direction. And I was pissed that I was having to go back into the fire, and I didn't want to do it because I knew once I left the building, then whoever came in as manager, things might change, etc., etc. And then I don't know if that opportunity to stay would have gone. So as it did, I went back. Billy came in. There was a lot of reports that me and Billy had fallen out, but we hadn't. We had a decent enough relationship at Derby, as I've documented a million times.
Because everybody assumed that, because there were rumours about Billy coming in, he was going to be the next manager. And then I think everybody put two and two together when you came out after the Norwich game and said, I'm done here. My loan spell's up. It's not going to, the new manager's coming in. I'm not going any further. I think a lot of people assumed, Billy Davies, Lee Camp, he's going back to QPR. it's obvious to see why.
Yeah, and it's a fair assumption. It's a fair assumption, and I think probably people within the club also thought that, you know, board members, owners, chief execs, they probably thought that there was a bit of a there was an issue there, but there really wasn't. My time at Derby was done a long time before Billy came in, and he had to build his own football team and his own club, and rightly so. They went on and achieved stuff in that first year. So there was no hard feelings. It's business. It is what it is. It's very subjective. You just roll with the punches, and I knew how good Billy was, and I knew that. Although I liked Colin, and I thought Colin would have got success if he'd have got a couple of players in January and was able to. Because if you look at the Forest team that came up and the team that was playing in the Championship, I thought was considerably weaker than the team that actually got promoted. With losing Chris Commons and a couple of other players and replaced with younger players. And it's a big gulf, League One to the Championship.
It was a very young team as well.
It was a very young team. And I mean, they brought me in, I think I was like 24, 25 at the time. And I felt as if I was one of the older ones with Brex, Smudge, Ernie. And I'm looking around thinking, but there's good talent. There's good players here who just need more just to climatise to the division. So I thought that Colin would have had a success, but they made a decision and they brought Billy in. But I knew Billy would be a success. I knew Billy would get through the first 6 months of it, so say to the end of the season. And then I knew that with the way he coached and the way he set his teams up and the way he did things, that this squad would thrive off it. And we tried to get things done in January. For one reason or another, we couldn't get it done. Whether the club were worried about being relegated and taking on a contract or paying money for me for whatever reasons, it went right down to the wire in the January. We had to do it in the January because I'd already been on loan outside of the windows. I couldn't come back on loan. So there was a real push until the end of the window closed to try and get something done. And in all fairness, it wasn't QPR that held it up. Forest just didn't do as they said they were going to do. Mark Arthur and whoever didn't deliver on what they said they were going to deliver. I think to Billy's frustration, and not just me. I think there was other
not for the first time, not for the last time either.
Yeah. So I was one of a number that never came in that January, and thankfully the club stayed up. And I always had an idea that if I was still in the same position at QPR would be pretty keen to get me out of the door because of my contract I was sitting on, and obviously I was desperate to go to Forest. So thankfully we managed to get it done. It wasn't plain sailing. Nothing ever is. You got a player that wants to come to play for Nottingham Forest. You've got a club that wants to get rid of a player. Seemingly you've got a club that wants to sign a player, and yet at times it's like pulling teeth dealing with people. But we got there in the end, and it was a start of a great 3.5 years at a great football club.
Was that your best spell coming up? I mean, you obviously signed, and then that 2 years where you got to the Championship playoffs 2 years in a row. Was that your best spell as a keeper?
I think so. I think for them 2 years, I think that's probably the best football I've played. I've had other spells where I've played well, and I think my longevity and have played so many games, I must have had some sort of consistency about me to hang around so long, which was always a thing I was taught when I was younger, was always to have consistency and to be a 7 out of 10. Don't be up and down. But I think for them 2 years, I think that was probably me at my best. I think all the stars aligned, and I think it had topped off if we could have got promoted or got to a playoff final and give ourselves a chance. But I think them 2 years was probably the best I've played. I think I had a year at Rotherham, 6 or so months at Bournemouth, bit of a spell at Derby. You know, I've had spells, but I think really them 2 years was when I was at the top of my game.
Because you went on to play for Northern Ireland, but there was talk of you playing for England as well at the same time, because if memory serves, there was a World Cup coming up, and there was a feeling that there was, you know, a third keeper spot kind of up for grabs. There wasn't an obvious contender. Did that ever come close?
No, not to my knowledge. I think to take a goalkeeper out of the Championship would have been really is unrealistic, really. I think, you have to be playing in a top division or in a top division in Europe somewhere, maybe Champions League or European football, if you're not in the Premier League. But no, it never really came close. I think people start stuff and the bandwagon gets going.
You must have loved it.
Well, yeah, it's nice. Obviously, of course, you always think,
Yeah.
wow, that'd be amazing. But I never really saw it as realistic because I've always been quite pragmatic by that. I always think that, well, you have to be playing in the Premier League. And I think John Ruddy ended up going maybe, but he was playing well in the Premier League. So playing a high level, playing well, he deserved his opportunity. And I don't consider I really did, because I think you have to be in the Premier League. I think you have to be at the highest level. And but yeah, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's always nice to be mentioned when you with your country. But there was never any that. It was always from the outside. There was never any whispers or anything coming from the inside, or this might happen. It was always seemed to be a bit of a hysteria on the outside of the club.
Coming back to those playoff semi-finals, where do you think? I mean, it might be too simplistic to ask, but where do you think it went wrong for Forest not at least to have made a playoff final, which seemed, I mean, particularly the first one always strikes me, that season, it seemed as though Forest deserved so much more out of the season than just to have reached the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that was probably the best opportunity, probably better than the year after. I think our problem is that we go to West Brom and we win, and I think we're coming off of a great Christmas period, and there's an opportunity to really strengthen the side, one or two players, just give you that little bit of boost, because you do need a boost. You need a few extra bodies, because as the season goes on, you're going to get injuries, you're going to get suspensions, you're going to get people who maybe dip in form, who need a little bit of a break. Remember, the majority of the squad are still young players. But we had Nicky Shorey, who was a breath of fresh air and was absolutely fantastic for us. He was just what we needed. Experience, a good left back, because we didn't have a left back, which amazes me. Went into a season without a recognised left back. And he came in and he gave us a great balance, great experience, calm and influence, an assurance about the side, great delivery from set plays, lovely left foot. And he was just what we needed. And then you're thinking, well, extend it to the end of the season, and that's that boxed off, and we've not got to worry about that. And his experience will come out as the season goes on, because he's been there and he's done it, and he'll be a calm head amongst others. And then he goes back. So you're thinking, well, where are we going here? And then there's rumblings that James Perch is going to Newcastle, and he gets unsettled, and there becomes a whole political game like that. And he's going at the end. It's all known that he's going at the end of the season, and there's money on the table. So the poor lad's getting pulled from pillar to post. He doesn't know what to do. Then he's inevitably, there's always a little bit of stick. Oh, he doesn't want to be here. So, and that wasn't the case. So you're having to deal with that. So we win at West Brom on the Friday night, and you're thinking, we're a good side. Like, something's really motoring here. We've got a chance. And then within a week, the wheels are pulled from under you. There's no in Nicky Shorey. Even if Nicky Shorey stays and you don't invest in the side, or don't bring anybody else in on loan or strengthen it, whatever, that team has a chance. And then West Brom go and invest. They go and get they realise where they are. They take us serious, because they then go and reinvest and get players in. And ultimately, we ended up, I think we finished third, and we were very comfortable in the playoffs, but we lost all momentum. We would go away from home and lose. We'd win at home and play well. We'd go away and we'd lose. And we were chopping and changing. And then the problem is, with 2 or 3 weeks ago, you're in the playoffs. And it's very difficult for any manager or any players not to then take their eyes off the ball. And that's just reality. You can do all the right things, you can say, but you're waiting for the playoffs. So everybody's thinking, I want to be a part of the playoffs. I don't want to get injured. Who are we going to get? We've got 2 more games to go. Do we make changes? Do we give players minutes? There's all these factors. And I just think we ran out of steam. And we came up against a Blackpool team that had momentum. And they beat us 4 times that year. And they beat us at the City Ground early on in the season 1-0, which was a bit of a smash and grab. But they beat us in, like I said, we was winning at home and losing away. We lost it at Blackpool, I think, before the playoffs 3-1. And then they beat us again in the playoffs, the first leg. But then even going back to the City Ground, I thought, with our form and the way we started, the way we can start games at City Ground, I thought, well, if we get at them, there's a chance. But and we scored early. We started really well, and that was probably the best thing that happened to Blackpool, because then they settled down and started playing and took control of the game. And then probably second half we just went for it, and they picked us off, and they showed what a good side they were. But I think that was probably the best opportunity. But we just run out of momentum in the end with all the, I don't want to say excuses, but they are factors that come into your squad and come into the team. And it felt as if other people were pushing, and we'd had the wind knocked out of us a little bit by losing Nicky, and then Perchie being unsettled for no reason, and then have a couple of injuries and loss of form. And that's when you need a couple of players who are a bit fresher, even if they're not playing well, but with their experience and their know-how, they can get you through games and keep that momentum going. And there never was, and since that day, there's never been a better chance for Nottingham Forest to get out of the Championship back into the Premier League in my eyes. And
I think that's right. I mean, that West Brom game, which was fantastic to watch, and was in January, probably mid-January, if not earlier.
Yeah,
that was the last away win of the season, which is remarkable when you consider where Forest were, how they were playing, and that performance at West Brom.
Yeah, and we was just on a roll. I think we'd gone over Christmas and not conceded. I think the goal at West Brom, we were close to breaking the club record. I think it's 6 games without conceding. We were 3-0 up. And in many ways, we weren't cruising, but we were very comfortable. And we were a proper side at that point. We'd got all of it all clicked in. I know, because we had a bit of probably a slow start to the season. And then obviously the question, but we knew what we were doing. We knew where we were going and what we were doing. And at that point, it clicked.
There is much more to come from Lee Camp in just a moment. He'll tell you how Steve McClaren, as Forest manager, was just never going to work, in his opinion. All of that on the way very soon. I want to thank members of Chippers Club, particularly gold members, but silver and bronze as well. You get to see the video with no YouTube adverts. You get to see it at least a week early, and also you get to see the full version as well. And if you're a gold member, you get my thanks as well on one of the videos. I'll pop a link if you want to sign up for Chippers Club in the description below. Gold members this week are Carl Thorne, Tiny Media, Philip Sheldon, Chris Annable, Paul Harrison, Christian Tonnies, Perry, James Sorden, Thomas Newton, Mark German, Alan Francis, David Shelton, Mark Davis, Ez Chowdhury, Paul Metcalf and Tim Hayward. Thank you to each and every one of you. As I say, if you want to sign up and get all those benefits, the link is in the description below. Let's get back though to the story at Forest of Lee Camp. You obviously had the following season with Billy as well, when lost to Swansea in the playoffs, and then he goes, and that seemed to have a kind of an effect on the whole club that kind of undermined everything. And I don't know what you felt about Steve McClaren, but it felt like whoever came in post Billy Davies was going to struggle.
Yeah, to me, that the decision still baffles me. It still baffles me now. I can't, when people talk about this, there's politics, and I don't know if I'm a purist or if I'm naive to the world or what, but I just think do what's right for the club. And I think that sometimes you have to check your ego at the door and realise that it's about the team and about what's best, and that for that squad, that Billy was the right man. And I don't understand how you sack a manager who's got you to 2 playoffs. And I think the second year is a hell of an achievement, because we lost Kelvin Wilson, and there was a crazy situation around him going to Celtic and not going, and then he doesn't play, and then so we're now Perchie down, who ends up going to Newcastle. We're now Kelvin Wilson down, who in the end ends up going to Celtic. So the emergency chamber comes through, but you're a centre half down, and you're forever chasing your tail. We started the season without a left back. We end up bringing Ryan Bertram in a day before we go to Burnley away for the first game of the season, and he leaves in January. So there's all these things that go on. It's like there was never the only time that team was ever really settled is when it played really well. All the other times, Chris Cohen playing left back, but then you lose his energy in midfield because he was an unbelievable engine and gave you so much, and you were putting good players in positions, but not in their best positions. And I just didn't understand how you sack a manager when he's had to go through all that, and then you sack him at the end of it, and you think, where are you going to go with this? And I remember there was me, Chambo, Lewis, and Joel Lynch, and we was in Vegas. Us four was in Vegas for the weekend. And I was sharing a room with Chamber, as you do. Well, it was a bit longer in a week. We'll call it a long weekend, like Wednesday to Tuesday or something like that. But so we're there, and I'm sharing a room with Chamber, and Joel and Lewis are in the next room. And my phone rings. It's Mark Arthur. And I'm thinking, he's never rang me before. I was surprised he even had his number in my phone. I showed it to Chamber, and I was like, Chamber, what's he calling me for? Better answer it. So I answered it, and he's just very straight, right. Hi, Lee, Mark Arthur. Just to let you know, we've sat Billy Davies, and Steve McClaren will be appointed the manager in the next whatever. Thanks. See you later. And hung up. And that was it. Wow. I was like, what was it? And I told the lads, and we was all obviously shocked and that. But I think we was more shocked by Steve McClaren because, and it's no disrespect to Steve, and to be honest with you, I don't really care what people think of it, but he was never going to be a fit for Nottingham Forest in a million years. I have no idea how you sat Billy Davies and then you land on Steve McClaren. I just don't know how that happens. I really don't.
Because they're so opposite.
They're so opposite, polar opposites. Personality, probably their philosophy on football, probably the way they deal with things, the way they deal with people. It just didn't look a fit. And players ain't stupid. They're not, footballers aren't thick. They know what's going on. And you know immediately, as soon as somebody walks in the door, if it's going to be a success, and you buy into the ideas and you give everything you give, but you just know that this isn't going to work. And it just didn't work. The recruitment of the players that come in, and this is no disrespect to the players that came in the door, but they weren't the players that were needed to replace the players that had left, because the whole dynamic of the team completely changed. And you're now going, it's like a 180 shift. You're going from a certain young, vibrant team that's energetic, in your face, aggressive, young, full of testosterone, all them sort of stuff, to an older group, which has got senior players in it who play a different way. So immediately the squad is completely changed.
Yeah,
you've gone
because
it was
great. Just to pick up, you've got Greening and Boateng coming in, who had both been very, very
fantastic
good players.
Fantastic players, great characters, and added so much into the change room, but they weren't at that time in their careers the right players for what that team was. Now, they might have been the right players for the way Steve McClaren wanted to play and the way he wanted to do things, but it wasn't enough compared to what you had. So then you had a complete disconnect in terms of how the players had played for probably 2.5 years under Billy, certainly 2 full years with me, but obviously he was there for the 6 months before. So that was ingrained to them. So a completely different style. And then he brings in different also, Billy goes, you lose the backroom staff. And that backroom staff was a good backroom staff who had good relationship with players and did a lot with the players, not just on the training ground, but also in terms of in the gym, in their minds, helping them with all the things. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that people don't see. They all go. And in comes Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, great guy, fantastic player. It's his first coaching job. And I'm not sure that he was the right fit for Nottingham Forest at the time. A sports scientist comes in who barely speaks English. And it's like, what's going on here? How this is so polar opposites to where we are and what we are. And then a natural divide creates because you've got a Billy Davies section. And it's not a bad section that's going, oh, we want Billy. We're not going to buy into it. There's going to have to be a period of time where there's like a culture shift. You've got to allow these players to change their culture and change the way that you want to do it, because the players that Steve McClaren brought in and the stuff that he brought in, they was on his on his path. So we have to come over and get in line, which players were prepared to do, but it doesn't just happen overnight. You've got to allow these things to happen organically. And it was just a weird time for the football club, a really weird time. And I don't think that's what the Forest fans wanted either.
Did you know from day one?
That was his senses.
When you took that call in Vegas, perhaps, or maybe when you got back for pre-season training, did you think this ain't working?
No, I was very shocked. And I thought, oh, this would be interesting. I didn't think straight away this would work. I questioned the decision to think, like we said, polar opposites, complete polar opposites. And I'd be interested to see how the dynamic was, but I would never, and I never did make a judgment until I actually met Steve and his staff and saw how it played out. And probably, I mean, I had a few issues with potentially going to Swansea. They bid for me, things like that. They'd just gone up and whatever. So I had a slightly different start with the manager because he had to deal with that with me, and we had a couple of conversations. But I didn't really think, I really thought this wasn't going to work the day before Barnsley, because all pre-season was geared around playing, possession, rotations, things like that, which we were capable of doing and the players were good enough to do, and everyone had bought in. But then it changed. We go to Barnsley and it was like, right, we're going to go forward, we're going to play into the big, and it was a complete different way of play. So immediately, it's a completely different message. You've just spent 6 weeks hammering this into us, working hard, doing everything. And then a day or two before we play Barnsley at home, it's a completely different idea. So straight away you're thinking, do you not believe in us? Now you're going into the actual season when the judgment's on. Do you believe in that we're not good enough to do this? Or are you just going the most simple way of going, right, we're going to play deep, we're going to hit it long, like the simplest way of playing, to be caution. And I thought at that point, there was a shift then in people's minds. And I can't speak for people. I also think there might have been a shift in the staff's mind as well, because again, it went from playing to that. It's another one, like a whole shift.
Almost as if we haven't got the players to play the way I want to, so we're going to have to go back to how it was.
Back to how Billy was, or how this was. And it wasn't even really how Billy was, because Billy wanted to have every stat. He wanted to outrun teams, wanted to outspit, he wanted to outpass, he wanted more possession, he wanted more corners. It was like the demand was like, I want to have every stat, everything better than the opposition. So it wasn't even like we'd gone back to Billy. It was like a completely basic way of playing. And it just sent a message of like, you're not good enough. You can't do it my way. I haven't got the players. We're just going to play to your capabilities. And I just thought it was a bit of a kick in the teeth. And there was meetings. He brought in Bill Bezic, and there was meetings. And I just felt the way they spoke to the players, and the way that this is completely my take on it. They thought that they were above Nottingham Forest. And I thought the way that they spoke to us were as if we were a struggling club that they'd come in to rescue. And that was my honest feeling of the way that they spoke to people. Not mainly Steve. Steve has a certain way about him, which is Steve. Not always the best way, but it is what it is. But I think the people around...
You've said more there by saying nothing than you ever did by saying stuff.
Well, yeah, maybe so. But there was like I don't know, it was always reverted back to like talking about Manchester. I remember having a meeting, he had Philip Neville on the telly, and he's talking about, so Phil, what do you rate yourself out of 10 for your technical ability? Oh, Bill, I give myself a 6 or a 7. I'm thinking, that's Phil Neville. He's played for England. He's captain Manchester United, Champions League winner, how many Premier Leagues? Captain of Everton maybe at the time. Like, this player, you look at it, you think, wow, what a player. Gary Neville's on there giving himself scores. And I'm thinking, they're playing for Man United and they're classing themselves as a 6. Well, we're nowhere near the Premier League. What do you think we are? Like that, to me, that isn't a way of building confidence and showing people what you're all about, and building a spirit and making players want to achieve. When you've got Manchester United players talking about them being 6 and 7s out of 10 technically, and I'm looking again, these are world-class players. These players have won Champions Leagues and all these trophies and played for England. And they're saying, so where do you expect me to pitch me? You ask me, what am I technically? Well, 2 makes me feel amazing. If Gary Neville and Paul Scholes and Nicky Butt and people like this are classing themselves as 6s and 7s, Paul Scholes is revered as one of the greatest players ever to play. And he's given himself a 7. 7? What? Then I'm -3. What are you? So, Raddy, what's your technical ability? What? And against Paul Scholes? Well, well, I can't say 5, can I? Because I should be playing in his team. It was like the whole psychology of it. It just bamboozled me, and that's when I know. I just thought, when he changed it, I was all right with that though. I was all right. I could get my head around all that sort of stuff and understand that people have a way of doing stuff and motivating and psychology, because it's fine. That's your thing, right?
He was really big on that psychology, wasn't he? I mean, Bill Bezic, you mentioned, was the kind of the dream psychologist, the kind of celebrity showbiz psychologist in football that was going to change the world.
perception and reality.
Yeah.
And what can I say? What can I say? You know, if enough people talk about it, it must be true. That's how only way I can describe it. I just didn't get it, but I listened and I bought it. I didn't buy in. I listened and gave it a chance, and I always thought, well, you know, I'll try it on, see how it goes. Let's have a look. Let's see where there might be something at the end of it. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. And you come out of them meetings, and I can honestly tell you, Chippers, I come out of them meetings thinking I've had 2 great seasons, player of the year, team, whatever. I come out thinking, what do these think of me?
Yeah.
If they're agreeing, and the best bit in the video is going, yeah, Paul, I think that's a really fair assessment of yourself. And I'm thinking, no, it's not. Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, like, how?
Yeah.
What do you think of me? What do you think of players that aren't in Billy Davies's team, who haven't played for 2 years consistently because they couldn't get in this side? How do they feel? Where are they thinking they're at? And I'm thinking, straight away, it was like Billy would make you feel 10 foot tall. It's him against the world. The little, you know, the little angry head would come in and he'd start banging it and make you feel big and proud to be. I remember walking off the bus with Billy, he'd be like, remember who you play for, you're Nottingham Forest, stick your chest out, get your chin up, remember what badge you've got on. And you'd walk off the bus at away ground and you'd be like, yeah, we're Nottingham Forest. We're in town. Like, we're here to win. We're going to show, like, we're Nottingham Forest, by the way. Get out of the way. We're not, like, that's how you felt, as if you're like the Harlem Globetrotters were coming into Blackpool or coming into Barnsley. It was like, we're Nottingham Forest. We're here to win. Maybe that sounds a bit arrogant, but that was the mentality of us, was that we're Nottingham Forest. The whole mentality turned as if, like, well, what are we? Like, if that's Manchester United, like, it was just, the psychology was all wrong. And then it just felt bad, really negative, almost toxic. And
there was no recovery.
He walked out. There was no recovery. And then he walked out. I mean, we lost at Burnley. And I mean, it was like, we ended up playing, I think we won at Watford and we played 3 at the back, and we went to Burnley and played 3. It was like, just throw something against. It felt like it was throw something against the wall and see what sticks to that point. And then he walked out. He left.
How annoyed were you by the whole Swansea thing? I'm trying to think when that was. Was that the end of Billy Davies, perhaps? Or was it just under Steve McClaren?
That was under Steve. There was no talk of it. The first I heard of it was when I had a call to say that Swansea had bid and the club had rejected it.
Swansea in the Premier League, we should point out, and pretty established.
Swansea's just gone up, yeah. No, they've just gone up. They've just beat us in the playoffs. So I got a call to say that the bid, I can't remember what the bid was, $1 million or something like that. And then I think there was 3 or 4 more bids. And I was like, well, if you're not going to accept it, then what does it look like? Because at this point I was questioning. I wasn't not against Steve or anything like that, but I was questioning where the club was going and what we're doing. And I thought, well, this is an opportunity to play in the Premier League. It's like, how often do these chances come? I think the club paid less than 100 grand for me. I'd had 2 good years, good opportunity to cash in. I don't think anybody would have begrudged me going. I think the club were going to get a good deal. I think in the end, it got close to 2 million quid, the offer. So, but they just didn't deal with it correctly. They didn't communicate with me. Steve didn't communicate correctly with me. The goalie coach, who Steve brought in, didn't communicate correctly with me, or rightly. He stuck his nose in where it wasn't really wanted, but then didn't communicate why or what was happening afterwards. And all it would have taken was simple communication. Look, this is what we think. This is where it is. We're not going to do this. Fine, get on with it. But it becomes all political and messy, and everyone wants to have a say. You know, you try to speak to Mark Arthur about it. He doesn't call you back. You try and get word to the chairman. You're trying to get communication, and there's nothing. So you're just left in this grey area with all this going around you. And then people accusing that you don't want to be there. And, you know, I had people come up to me in West Bridgford and say, well, if you don't want to be here, just go. We're not. And it couldn't be any further from the case. It was a case of like, I don't know what's going on. Like my agent, who was trying to communicate with the club, there was just no communication coming. So how close I was going to Swansea, I really don't know, because all I was told was, we've had a bid. And then I hear that there's more bids going and it's been rejected, but there's no communication coming from Nottingham Forest to me. And I'm in the same building as most of these people most days. So
yeah,
it was just a real messy time. And that was obviously my case. It was public, but there was other players as well who had bids, which I don't think was as public at the time as, if I remember right, but they had the same problems. They had the same problems, the lack of communication and direction of the club. And you also then probably start to see that this isn't going to last too long, because there must be some sort of infighting between the manager and chief exec, or the owner, or chief scout in terms of recruitment. You just think if they can't communicate simple things, then it's not going to last long. You just wonder.
I just remember they were getting loads of stick, and McClaren was, if not saying it, was perhaps it was appearing in the papers that he was annoyed that he wasn't able to sign more players. I just wonder, from the club's point of view, if they'd sold you then, how bad that would have looked to a new manager who was trying to get players in, and all of a sudden his star goalkeeper's gone to another club. I don't know. That's me putting two and two together.
And you know what? That's as logical as any reason that ever came out. And yeah, it's simple. Just communicate that. Whatever your thinking is, the thing is, people talk about player power and things like that. There's not a lot you can do. I'm under contract. I take the man's money, so I'm going to do the man's job. It's as simple as that. He pays me 100% salary. I'm going to give you 100% and more back. It ain't a problem. But communicate. Just communicating what you're thinking and where you're at and what the future looks like, or how you want it to look like and what you want from me, is very simple. It's a 2-minute conversation. If that, it's like, well, I'd love to go and play in the Premier League, get an opportunity to go. You don't turn your nose up at it. But if you're telling me, no, it's not happening, this is what we're doing, this is where... Listen, I signed a 4-year contract with Nottingham Forest in good faith. I'll honour that. That's not an issue. Just communicate where you're at. And that was the problem. And I think, obviously, then he takes his communication into the press, as you said, in terms of not getting players. But it just gets messy. Unfortunately, it just gets messy. And then things happen, noise happens, and nonsense happens. And it's not a lot you can do.
Players.
It's just, you get upset players, but players get upset more by the fact that they're getting a bad rap for something that's not there, which is part and parcel of the cause. Don't get me wrong. And you have to take your raps, and you just have to deal with it. It's part of being a player. But it's almost an element. You feel like you get hung out to dry, because I'm sure I've done interviews with you in the past where you've asked me questions and you say things, but you can't. It's not my place to say things, and you can't say things that you really want to say, because it's not right. You can't. You can give so much, but you can't really tell the full story. It's like that. It's for the football club to tell the story. It's for them to communicate with their fan base what's happening, and they don't. And then there's all the noise and there's all the grey areas. People say this and people say that, and unfortunately, as a player, you don't get hung out to dry, but you're left to deal with a lot of it, where you're like, well, actually, I don't really know myself. I can't answer that. So it was just, all I remember was just, it was a bad. It became, the first 3 or 4 weeks were good and new ideas, fresh, let's give it a go. But then their demeanour changes. That then rubs off on the players. It all becomes very toxic. It's not a particularly great start to the season. We lose at home to Derby in a bad manner, and it just all sort of snowballs from there.
That season was an absolute nightmare from beginning to end, because obviously Nigel Doughty passed it that bit later in the summer after Steve McClaren had gone. Steve Cotterill comes in, and then a bit of Sean O'Driscoll, and then McLeish. But you leave under McLeish to go to Norwich, and it struck me that a few days afterwards, Billy Davies comes back to the club, and you'd have probably played, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, because I think that it wasn't McLeish that got rid of me. It was Fawaz who got rid of me. That's the reality. As soon as Fawaz come in, he was it. I kind of knew after that season, going into that last year, Sean was a breath of fresh air, and we did well to stay up. I think Steve Cotterill inherited a bit of a mess, and I think he did well with what he had and what he could do. I mean, the unfortunate passing of Nigel was horrific for everybody to deal with at the football club, and that obviously then changes the dynamic completely. So I think Steve Cotterill deserves a lot more credit than he's probably due. And I mean, me and Steve had a run-in or two here and there, and he had tatars with players, but as managers and players do. But I think he deserves a lot of credit. I thought he brought Sean in at a right time, because he came in on his own, which is another thing as well, because he inherited Steve's staff as well, because they stayed. So he had a good. They were good guys. Jimmy's a good guy. I know it perhaps wasn't the right fit at the time, but Jimmy's a good football guy. Alessandro, the fitness guy, came in. He was decent enough at his job, me and the goalie coach was a good goalie coach. We didn't always see eye to eye and had a bit of a up and down relationship, but he was good at what he did. Rob Kelly's fantastic and as good as anybody I've ever worked with, and an even better human being. But Sean came in and was a breath of fresh air. He came in with no baggage, no idea, and he just freshened the place up a bit. And I thought him and Steve worked well together with Rob and the staff. And in the end, we stayed up pretty comfortably, I think, and we made do of what was, you know, an overall bad season. We made it relatively gave the football club an opportunity to be sold to people. But I think as soon as Fawaz come in, he had all these glitzy ideas, and you know, there's all these people telling me about he's got the best goalkeeper in the world coming in from, I don't know, Kuwait or whatever, and all that nonsense. And at that point, I kind of like had a skinful. I was like, I came in on loan, thought I did a good job for the club while I was there. The club didn't really support Billy and didn't really help me out a lot in that January, because then when they don't fulfill on their promises, I'm left to deal with it at QPR. That's the reality. I knew what I was going back into, and I knew what was coming at QPR. So I have to deal with that for 6 months and all the nonsense that goes on there, and all the little bits and pieces of people are trying to chip at you to get you to cause trouble or whatever. So you have to deal with that. And then I come back and I have 2 great years. Third year, it was a mixed year. I didn't probably perform to my best, but I don't think I thought I contributed to the team staying up. So by that point, I'd probably had a skin for it. And I think people had probably had enough of me as well, because I'm opinionated and I'm not shy about coming forward, and I believe things should be always done the right way. And I get into players, and if I don't think the staff are doing things right, I'll tell them, because I want to win and I want things a certain way. And sometimes I've learned as I've got older, and I probably didn't appreciate at the time, some people aren't like that. Some people aren't always got your mentality, and some people do like to coast. And to me, that doesn't wash. That's not for me. If I see you coasting almost, I want me to win, and I'm here to be successful. And that's how I see it. And I think we had the majority of that, but you have a life show. I appreciate there's a lifespan when you like that you do gripe on people and people get sick of you. So I think probably at the end of that season with Cotterill, I think my span at the football club was about done. I think that was probably the time to go. We come back pre-season. We've got no players. There seemed to be a theme of the football club at the time is he just let players walk out the door. Just walk out. Kelvin walked out for free. I don't know who else left that summer. Ernie walked out for free. Players just seem to just walk out and go elsewhere and be successful. So we come back, I've got no players. Steve ends up getting sacked 2 or 3 days into pre-season. There's a mad search for a manager. Sean's took the Crawley job, ends up coming back. And I did and still do, I think, have a great relationship with Sean O'Driscoll, because very quiet, very dry, but has the same sort of values as I have, that he wants things done right. So I like the way he did things. I like the way he played. I like the way he managed people. I like the way he looked at recruitment and all that. And I learned so much under him in that short period of time that I thought, if he's here, then yeah, like I'm all in. I'm all in. Like, I'm a Nottingham Forest player. My thing is, like, they probably have had enough of me and probably my time, but I'm here. I take the money, so I'm going to do the work. And I was in full pelt. I come back that summer. I was fit. The summer previous as well, when Billy got sacked, I'd played the playoffs with a bad knee and a bad ankle. And that summer was a write-off in terms of trying to keep fit. And so when I came back to pre-season, I wasn't in the best shape I could have been. And I played catch-up. The reality was I missed a bit of pre-season with my ankle, ended up having an injection. And I played catch-up. And it caught up with me through the season that I wasn't physically where I should have been because of my injury. So I come back that summer, I'd lost weight. I'd gone on a different diet, different fitness regime, and I felt great. And I was all in. And then slowly we start well, we get going, and then you start to see things unravel coming up to Christmas. And I think Sean will probably even admit it, he knew that he was on borrowed time, because then when the January window comes around and he wants to invest in certain players and push the team, because I think we beat Leeds. I think it was Boxing Day again. It must be the curse of Boxing Day.
Yes.
We actually won. We beat Leeds on the telly.
A point off the playoffs.
Point off the playoffs. And it was the day it clicked. It clicked because we've been playing two up top, because everyone wants to play two up top. But we've been playing with like Simon, it's like a holding midfielder. It was like a semi-diamond. It was like two midfielders and a wide man. So it's like a cheating winger. And it took a bit of time to get used to how we did it, and it just clicked. I think we had a game at Watford where I think Daniel Ayala had got sent off and been on a rampage for 20 minutes, and we ended up getting beat. But it sort of happened that day as well, if I remember right. We'd worked out this formation of how to do things, and we were just starting to. It's like the thing with Billy in the first year. You're working on things and you're getting results, and you have a couple of bad results. It's a bit, but you can see, in the team, and within the change room, things are happening. You see things, momentum's building. And it just clicked against Leeds. And I remember I went out for, Elliot Ward was on loan, and we went out for dinner on the night, and again got a phone call. Campy, it's Sean, I've been sacked. What? Yeah.
He rang you himself?
He rang me himself. Or did I ring him? I think I heard. We definitely spoke. So I sat in Piccolino's in Nottingham
Bridgeford
with
again.
Elliot.
Yeah.
And no, we was in
the city.
not Bridgeford. No, stay away from Bridgeford. In the city. There was, I think Simon Gillett may have been with us, or Billy Sharp, someone anyway. So we heard it. So I rang him straight away and said, "What's this? Like, what's this?" He went, yeah. And Sean, just had a phone call. Sacked. Clear my desk out, gone. Thanks for everything. That was the end of the. That was just Sean, but that was Sean's way of saying thanks. But so and then McLeish come in, and at that point, I knew that. I was on borrowed time. I knew that. Sean had told me that as long as he was the manager, because there was a lot of things going around, people coming in, and he pulled me a couple of times and said, "Listen, don't listen to any of that. As long as I'm the manager, you'll be my goalkeeper." It's as simple as that. And then as soon as Sean went, I knew I was a dead man walking. And I think I had a couple of games under McLeish, but I knew that the axe is coming. There'd been conversations about a contract. Somebody told me not long after I left that I'd turned down like this contract down and all this, and I'd asked for this, and it was just nonsense. There was a conversation of like, "We'll give you, like, there you go, there's a contract, sign it right now." And I was a bit like, "Whoa, hold on a minute, like, what's this?" Because I thought that I would be going, but then the contract gets taken away. Is the contract on the table? All this nonsense of all the games people play, which I don't understand, because I thought we're all in it for the same cause. But anyway, so I knew that the writing was on the wall. So as soon as Sean went, I knew that this is only going to be these are my last couple of games. I knew that. I knew now that a new manager would come in and they'd bring a goalkeeper in. And as it turned out, they didn't. They brought Carl back, and Carl got in the team and did fantastic, and has gone on to great things. And obviously, I leave to go to Norwich, which was an opportunity to go to the Premier League, not playing and being a part of the squad, but it was, it was time. My time had run its course. I probably got another 6 months out of Forest that I probably did expect actually after that summer. But it's a sad end, really. Sad way to finish. I'd like the club to have got some money for me and finished it the right way, but you can't have the fairy tale ending. No point getting emotional about it. It's just get on with it.
What struck me is that, just to wrap things up, is that people say to me, "Oh, it's never dull at Forest," and here I am chatting to you for just over an hour or so, and I would imagine you probably lived through the most up and down spell in Forest history, perhaps in the last 20 or 25 years or so. That kind of the roller coaster of emotion, and it's interesting that supporters obviously go through it. And as journalists covering the club, you go through it, but players obviously go through it as well.
Yeah, you do, because I was invested. I was really, and I've always been invested in the teams I've been in. I was invested in QPR the first year, and then when it goes sour, it's like people always say you care too much, but I was invested in Nottingham Forest. I love playing for Nottingham Forest, and I always felt as if I had more to prove because of my connection with the derby. And maybe it's that game we spoke about at the first where I endeared myself to the fans, but I always thought that the whole derby thing was never an issue with me playing for Forest. I think I always got the sense that they appreciated that I always did my best. I always tried. I always wanted the team to do well. I took great pride in the times I captained the club. My name's on the Player of the Year trophy with with names that I would never ever dreamed of when I was a kid that I'd my name would be on that trophy with them players. So I took great pride playing for the football club. And it was probably after that, when I left Forest, where not lost a spark for football or lost the passion, because I'm still passionate about it. I love football and things I'm going into now that I'm sort of finishing playing and whatever. I'm still passionate about it. But it was that after Forest, it's hard. Can't really put it. I'm not articulate enough to put it into words. But probably I left something at Forest. I was the whole experience was so good, and we got so close to so many things. And playing for the club, the changing room was brilliant. Some of the lads we worked with, I always felt I had a good relationship with, like yourself and the tales at the paper. A good relationship with people around Nottingham. They always took to me. Like everywhere I went, if you see a Forest, they were just brilliant. And I never felt like that whole Derby connection thing was an issue. It's like they took me as one of their own.
Mm.
And I think when I left Forest, I probably left like a little bit of myself at the club. And I've never, going back to Derby, the abuse I get when I go back to Derby is unbelievable. Not even in a Forest shirt, it's unbelievable. You know what? I've never not been bothered about going back to QPR and going back to. I never wanted to come back and play at Forest. The first time I played back at Forest was with Birmingham, and I didn't want to do it. I never wanted to play against Forest, and I never wanted to come back to the City Ground because I never felt right playing in an opposition shirt at the City Ground. And they're probably the 2 times I played for Birmingham. There are probably the 2 times on a football pitch where I've not felt 100% comfortable. I've always felt like something's not right here. I'm in the wrong shirt, if that makes sense. And that's not saying, oh yeah, it's weird. It's a weird going back to Derby. Never interested me. Going back to QPR, all these clubs. Went back to Cardiff, played for Birmingham. Doesn't bother me or that. Going back to Forest felt weird. I didn't. It may be because it was such a long time, and I don't know. It just didn't. I think the first time I played against Forest was with Bournemouth when I was at Bournemouth and down at Bournemouth, and I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't know. That wasn't bad, actually. Playing away from home, going back to the City Ground and playing in a different shirt didn't quite feel the same. And I don't know, there was just something special about playing for Forest. And I think after that, it became more of a job than actually a real passion. Which is a shame, really, because we could have been so much different at Forest, but it is what it is. But then I went to Birmingham and I had 2 years there, and wow, that's the Wild West. Thought Forest was a bit chaotic at times. Jeez.
Yes. Very good friend of mine is a Birmingham fan, and he's not got much good to say.
Yeah, and I come out of that experience wanting to go into management and coaching, so I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Maybe I need
go away for a holiday. You've had a knock on the head.
Yeah. But no, overall, great memories of Forest. I have no bad feeling or anything, and I'm so pleased where they are now. They're doing well. It's, I think, finally they've got the manager with a bit of gold dust that's gone through all the weeds and found a system and a formation with all the players he's got at his disposal and got them winning. So I wish them every success. I really hope they get back in the playoffs and they get promoted.
It'd be great to catch up. So many good memories and some bad ones, but so many great stories. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.